Okay, we're live. Hey, Crypto Heads, it's the Goose with the Cryptic Paranormal Show. And as usual, my illustrious host, Mr. Heisenberg, sitting across from me.
Hello.
How you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
Good. And we have Denise, our third and social media guru and chat moderator and all kinds of other stuff. She does a lot for the show. Glad to have her on, and we're going to have her on as much as we can. And our very, very special guest, Miss ANDREA PERRON. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing evening? How is your evening going? I know you're on a little kind of a vacation tonight.
No, everything's going well. I had a wonderful day with my mother and my sister. They've both gone off to bed. They're just letting me do my thing here. So it's quiet in the house, and I can join you and answer your questions and have a wonderful time. It's nice to meet Michael and Denise.
Me too.
Nice to meet you as well.
You're so polite.
Yes, I am.
No, he's not.
I know.
So we've got a lot of people already. Yeah. We I met you briefly at the Old Mill Parafest a couple years ago, and I actually got to watch you speak like a couple minutes when I could sneak away from my table, and you had an amazing story to tell. So I had to get you on the show tonight. I know friends of ours who have other shows have had you on, and I've got to watch those shows, and we just had to get you in because there's a lot to learn from your story, and we're ready to go with this. So we're ready to have some fun tonight.
I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm a big scaredy cat. So if I hear some stuff and you see me run out, I'm not being rude.
Yeah, he's actually, one of the, obviously anybody who knows ANDREA PERRON knows that she is the eldest daughter of the family that lived in the Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, which The Conjuring was based off of. And Mr. Heisenberg, Mr. Mike over here, does not like horror movies, so he hasn't seen the movie.
Nope.
I don't think Denise has seen the movie because she's not a big horror fan.
I did watch a little bit of some clips.
Nope, I'm a scaredy cat.
That was as far as I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did watch some stories on YouTube just to get a little background before you came on. And I've seen the movie probably, I don't know, a dozen times already. But I wanted to have you on because obviously the art doesn't really reflect reality, and we wanted to know what the real story is. So here we are. We got a lot of people already chiming in. Hello, Sean, Sam, Chris, Laura. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
So, Andrew, first I wanted to ask you something we talked about earlier. What's up with the potato salad? What is so special? We were talking about how your potato salad, and you said you made the best potato salad in the known universe. Those were your exact words, right?
I do. Well, that's what I'm told. That's what I'm told, and I had a restaurant for 10 years of my life, and people would drive halfway across the state of Rhode Island to buy it by the pound, and by special order. So I probably made, I don't know, maybe 20,000 pounds of potato salad over the course of my life.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's and I made a fresh batch for my mom and my sister tonight, along
Lucky.
with barbecued boneless ribs and summer squash and sweet corn, and made them a feast for tonight because they deserve it, and because Chris had a long hard day at work, and I wanted her to come home to a nice meal. And so that's what I did before hopping on the radio with you. Was I cooked for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then I cleaned the whole kitchen so that we don't have to deal with it after the fact. So it's my thing. I love to cook. I find it very therapeutic, and it's very calming. And the only thing about cooking, though, is that's strange for me is that while I'm cooking, I'll have memories of things that spring back up from my childhood. Certain aromas, the fragrance of boiled potatoes makes me think of something, in particular, or it's just strange. My mind wanders all over the place. But that's really not unusual. It's just that when I'm cooking, it really wanders. And so I was thinking about growing up at the farm and learning how to cook and having my mother teach me how to make potato salad while I was cooking today. And I was like, Mom, do you remember teaching me how to do this? And she's like, yeah. She says, nobody dices vegetables as tiny as you do. And I'm neurotic about it. I mean, my celery has to be perfect, tiny little pieces, and the onion has to be sliced just so, and everything has to be just right. I'm just absolutely neurotic about perfection. And my secret ingredient in all the food that I cook is love.
There you go. That's the most important ingredient. My mom did the same thing. It was funny. We had the conversation about how food brings back those memories of childhood. My mom made some pretty amazing potato salad, but her sisters and her were so competitive about who made the best potato salad and who was the closest to my grandma's recipe. I mean, they got into big fights over that.
It's a hot button topic.
It is. With sister of nine children, and my mom's family made the best potato salad. And just every time I eat potato salad, I think of her now. And your aunt puts pickles in it, and your other aunt doesn't put onions in it, and it's like, it becomes this big hot topic debate. And it's
I don't like it.
You don't like potato salad?
All I know is whenever we have a big family gathering, I bring some potato salad. And, all I know is that when the gathering is over, my bowl of potato salad is empty. And I can't say that for all the others. That's really all I have to say about that.
It makes it easier to carry the stuff back home.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm putting my stuff and make people take things. I'm not traveling with leftovers. No way, no how. If I got it there, it needs to disappear before I leave.
Yeah.
It does. And they know that.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. When we have potato salad and we take it to somebody's house or something, because Kim always makes potato salad. And I'm like, okay, I ration it out to everybody, give them a little bit of a spoonful, so I make sure I have the biggest amount I can to take home for myself when I get home.
She won't make it for you at home?
She's going to this weekend for Father's Day.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So I will get my own potato salad this weekend for
Why
Father's
don't you
Day.
learn how to make it?
I don't make potato salad.
I don't understand the whole concept.
All right. So we had the potato salad conversation. I had to get that
It's
out.
funny, there's a bunch of stuff about food on here.
Yeah, everybody's hungry. We got Sam saying he's hungry. John Wardson, he made chicken fettuccine Alfredo tonight.
Oh, that sounds good.
Sounds delicious. But we're not here to talk about food. We just. What's that?
There's only one thing that I wanted to mention. Goose, I've seen Conjuring as many times as you have, but that's because I had to travel all over the country and see it at every opening, wherever Warner Brothers wanted me to go. for
Yeah.
a premiere of the film. So I've seen it, yeah, probably about a dozen times. And it is the only horror film I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I've
Oh,
seen
wow.
little clips here and there of horror films, but I don't watch any of the paranormal shows unless my friends are in them. And then I'll
Okay.
catch what I can. If John Tenney's in one, I'm watching it. That's it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He's just fascinating. I think he's like the most fascinating human being on the planet. And I will
Yeah.
occasionally catch, something that Chip's doing or Amy and Adam, and I promote Kindred Spirits for them because I think it's a wonderful show. But I'm always writing or I'm working on another project or I'm working on screenplays or I'm working on something.
Right.
And so I really watch the shows and I don't watch horror movies. And I just think it's so funny when I encounter people who work in the paranormal that are scaredy cats. I just love it. I do. I love it. I'm like, oh, wow. You really get involved in something that terrifies you. Great. You're like adrenaline junkies, I guess. I don't know.
You know what it is? It's the music, man. It's the music.
You don't like the music?
No, because like they trick you with it.
Yeah.
You like think something's coming up, they're building it up, and then it like doesn't happen. And like a few seconds later, it's going to. But I just can't do it, man. If Ghost Hunting had music in it, I would not be a ghost hunter.
So we can't get the music box device.
No.
That'd freak you out too much.
No.
For me, I mean, the paranormal and watching horror movies is two separate things.
Okay.
I mean, I actually have a reason that I got into the paranormal, but I've always loved horror movies. So, I mean, it's just my thing. I mean,
My brother was watching when he was like 7, and I was hiding in the hiding in the other room.
Yeah.
I was like 5 years older than him.
Well, I tell you what, I accidentally watched Chucky, and that's what brought on the fear of dolls.
See, I don't think Chucky's a scary movie. I think it's a comedy.
What? You're insane. Chucky is a horror movie.
No, like I was watching the clips of the Conjuring thing, and I like turned my phone off.
Yeah.
So it's the music, and I know Denise, you don't watch them either, right? It's not your thing.
No, I don't. I like to keep it separate too. I like to go and ghost hunt and then come home, and that's like my safe space. I don't have to deal with anything scary at home.
Yeah,
Well,
that makes sense.
Of course, you bring an attachment home with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Think about that.
I do that often.
Yeah, I just that, Steve.
Yeah. So, Andrea, let's go ahead and get
Sure.
into the story here, because everybody wants to know what really happened. What was real? What is fact? What is garbage? Tell us the history. Like, give us the origin story of the whole thing. Like, how did you guys end up in the house? What really happened? I mean, there's so many questions we can ask. I know that's a very broad question.
Some scary stuff happened. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Well,
I know everybody.
I think that The Conjuring's probably the only film in the genre that's ever been made that they actually had to work to tone it down. And it was because James Wan was so terrified when he read my books after he came onto the project. He was like, "Oh hell no! Oh my God, no!" I mean, they were going to do some outside filming at the farm. We didn't own it then; it was owned by somebody else. But he was like, "No, we're not going to the farm. We're not going to Rhode Island. I'll go find another location someplace else in the country under no circumstances." And the screenwriters tried to incorporate elements of the true story into the screenplay, and every time they did, the bosses at Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema sent the screenplay back and said, "Redact that, take it out. It's so terrifying that people will not stay to watch the film. What's the point of making a film that nobody stays to watch to the end. And
Right.
so really all that proves is that um, most human beings are essentially fear-based carbon units. And the truth is
Mhm.
stranger than fiction. And so they decided to fictionalize it. And in so doing, relied on, the Hollywood method and formula, which basically resorted to, there being a possession of my mother. My mother was not possessed. And Lorraine Warren initiated a seance in our house in August of 1974 that went so terribly wrong that it almost cost my mother her life. And they tried to
Oh wow.
duplicate that with the scene in the film where they throw the rags over her and tie her to a chair and all of that. But none of that happened. There was a chair involved because my mother got tossed from the middle of our dining room into the middle of our parlor in the chair in which she was sitting. It happened in a split second. I don't know how it could even be recreated for film. And also Ed Warren was at the time the only trained layman in the world who could assist with an exorcism, but under no circumstances would he have initiated one on his own. It wouldn't have happened because he had such a very deep respect for the Catholic Church and the tradition and the ritual of exorcism that's not something that he would have ever anticipated doing by himself, no matter how bad the situation. So there are many, many discrepancies in the film, but in the grand scheme of things, they really did get it right. James Wan really wanted to get it right. He worked very hard, and the whole cast and crew worked very hard to do the best that they could because they understood that they were representing people, that a whole family that was alive. And my sister April passed away in March of 2017, and I'm glad that she lived long enough to see the film and to see my books come out. The real story is in my
Yeah.
books, and it's a big leap to take. I mean, I ask my readers to suspend disbelief. I
Mhm.
ask my readers to suspend linear time, so that they can, in the reading, have the same sense of timelessness that we did. It
Yeah.
is interactive literature. It is very emotional. People who read the trilogy tell me over and over again that when they come up for air on the other side, that they're just not the same, that they don't think about anything the same way. And I'm glad because that was my hope, was that I could bring them into our paranormal world and to come to grips with it, come to understand that it wasn't all doom and gloom, that there were many touching, wonderful things that happened during the 10 years that we lived at the farm. That it was really, in a lot of ways, it was a very miraculous, mystical, magical way to grow up. It was an enchanting place to grow up in. It was one of the original colonial homes that's left in America. The
Oh wow.
house, as it stands now, was completed 40 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh
So
wow.
That's true right there.
it
Yeah.
is, yeah, it will be 300 years old in 2036. And it is a very special place. I describe it as a portal cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. It is built on like an enormous, just it's built on water. It's built
Mhm.
on the land that it's built on is right on top of the Lost River of New Hampshire that was buried during the last ice age,
Oh
which is
wow.
the purest water that's ever been discovered on planet Earth.
Wow.
And it is, it's got a river, it's got creeks and streams, and I mean, everywhere you look, there's water, 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 and then the house in the middle. So I think that has something to do with the energy of the place. I don't know, and of
Yeah.
course, all of you being seasoned researchers. Oh, hold on a second. Spooky Shoes came out. She did. Oh, our missing kitty. She does not like my little
Okay.
baby dog at all. Where's Dink? Where's my Dink? Hold on just a second. Oh, come here. Be my friends. Come here, Dink. Okay. Hold on. This is the Princess Buttercup.
Buttercup.
On the whole planet, she is an internet sensation. She does all my Facebook Lives with me, and she's having a wonderful time visiting her granny and her aunties and all the kitties that she tries to eat, and they're all bigger than you, so I don't know what you're thinking. I don't even know what you're thinking. And yes, this is Princess Buttercup, and she's guarding the house. She's guarding the house while I do my show tonight.
There you
yes,
go.
my girl, you like yeah, be a good girl. And yeah, but one of our cats, Spooky Shoes, is not very fond of Princess Buttercup at all. And I've been here since night before last, and I just saw her for the first time. So if that tells you anything, yeah, she's hiding in a big way. So anyway, there's it's the thing about the farmhouse is, they could not conceivably compress 10 years into a 2-hour film. That's impossible. So what they did, and because The Conjuring is a series of films, and they're all based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The first movie was about us, but that was it. And I will proactively answer a few questions right off the top, the ones I get the most. My favorite one is, what the hell were you people thinking staying there for 10 years? And, and there were like 100 reasons why we stayed. My mother tried to get us out of the sale once she realized what was going on. And we didn't. I mean, ghosts, supernatural and paranormal were not words in our common vernacular as a family. We were all little kids. None of us even knew about that. Our idea of a ghost was find an old beat up white sheet that mom can cut holes in for Halloween so that we can be a ghost. I mean, that was it. And, the closest we ever came to anything supernatural was rushing home from school to watch Dark Shadows. Because, we all thought that Barnabas Collins was like the coolest thing on earth. And two of my sisters were too young to even be allowed to watch it. So, and I mean, that was literally it. But there were no spooks on the radar at all when we moved. My mother was fascinated with that farmhouse for a number of reasons, but predominantly because of its historical value, its antiquity. Excuse me. Now more Coke. Oh, nectar of the gods.
That's for the coffee.
So she didn't anticipate, nor did we expect anything weird to happen at the farmhouse, and nor did it. She found it in June of 1970. It took 5 months to negotiate the sale and get the closing done. And in that time, our family went to visit Mr. Kenyon, who owned the farmhouse, the farm, at that time, probably 5 or 6 times at least. And in so doing, we fell madly in love with him. He fell madly in love with us. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. And, even he knew that there were odd things about the house, but he didn't really tell us what they were, because I just don't think that he wanted to be perceived as, some, old man with delusions, or, he didn't know how my father or my mother would react. And he
Right.
really felt that our family was the ones that should have the farm. So the day we moved in was the first time that anybody saw anything strange or odd in the house. And I was the first one, but I didn't know that I was encountering a spirit. I thought I was encountering a neighbor that dressed funny. Truly, I did. And I
Wow.
walked in. It was January 11th, 1971. My mother refused to move before Christmas, understandably. Even though they closed on the farm in early December, it took us a month, more than a month, to get organized and packed and ready, and then Christmas and then New Year's, and then boom, we
Yeah.
moved into the farm. And the day that we did, I walked in, my father handed me a box out of the back of the van and said, "Take this to your mother in the kitchen." And she had gone around and taken April in through the kitchen door. April was only 5 years old at the time. And so the rest of us helped unload the van, but April was just too small and too young to do that. So she was mommy's little helper in the kitchen. And I walked in with my box through the parlor door, which, if you're looking directly straight at the farmhouse, it's the door on the left, off the center part of the house. The house is huge. It's absolutely huge. Um, and I rounded the corner into the dining room, and Mr. Kenyon was standing there, and he was packing up the last of his belongings that were in the china cabinet. There's a built-in hutch in the corner of the dining room, and I could see the sadness on his face. He didn't want to go. His son forced the issue. His son forced him to sell the farm. And he was the last of the legacy. He was 8 generations of one extended family had lived and died in that house. And I think that he anticipated that, like his wife before him, that would be his place to live out his life. And she had died a number of years prior to our arrival, but we were the first outsiders because she had inherited that house, and they raised their family there. So it was early. It was like mid-morning. I walked into the room. I greeted him, and then I saw that there was a man standing over in the corner of the room. He looked absolutely solid to me. I didn't see anything strange about him at all,
Wow.
other than his choice of clothes seemed odd. But other than that, and as I walked past him, I said, "Good morning, sir," and he did not respond to me. Um, he was just fixated on looking at Mr. Kenyon and watching Mr. Kenyon. And I walked into the kitchen and I said, "Mom, who's that man with Mr. Kenyon?" And she said, "There's nobody with him, honey. His son's on the way. He's not here yet." So I guess I just assumed it was a neighbor that had stopped by, and the moving crew was there, and they were bringing in beds, and they were bringing in dressers, and they were bringing in stuff, and we, the kids, were bringing in the boxes that were marked for the kitchen. So it was chaos. Moving day tends to be chaos. And then Christine walked in, and she said the same thing to my mother. "Who's that man with Mr. Kenyon?" And Mom said, "I don't know what you're talking about. There's nobody with him." And she was too busy to drop what she was doing and go check. So, I mean, it was not high on her priority list at that moment. And then Cindy walked in, and she said the same thing. "Who's that man who's dressed so funny? Does everybody out here dress like that?" And he was dressed in clothes from the mid-1800s. We didn't know that then. We were little kids.
Wow.
Um, and um, and then Nancy walked in, and she looked at Cindy and she said, "Did you see that man with Mr. Kenyon?" "I did, but he just disappeared." And that was our
Wow.
introduction to paranormal. Now, when I started my books, it's a trilogy of books, House of Darkness, House of Light. And I actually started before we moved to the farm because I want people, my readers, to understand that we were a perfectly normal middle-class American family that lived in the suburbs of Providence, Rhode Island, and that I wanted people to see everything that happened precisely the way that it happened and the way that it needed to happen. in order for us to be catapulted to the farm. And then they consequently, through that reading, see that transition, that convergence of events that occurs that literally transformed us from normal people into paranormal people. From the moment that we land at the farm in volume 1 till the moment that we leave the farm in volume 3,
Wow.
not everything is written chronologically. It's written according to the kind of haunting that it was, because there was literally so much activity in that house that I had to compartmentalize the events. So if it's in one chapter called Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, then all of the sub-chapters and the little stories that happened around that happened in bedrooms. So, for instance, something could happen to Cindy when she was age 8, but then the next story is Cindy at age 14. And somebody who is a linear thinker will be like, whoa, 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 I just lost 6 years. Well, no, you didn't. You need to understand what the correlation and the integration is between Cindy's experience as an 8-year-old and then Cindy's experience in that same bedroom 6 years later. And why are these stories side by side? And pause and reflect on that. And that's what I mean by interactive literature. And yet everybody tells me that even though it throws them a little at the beginning, you know, when they start to see everything's mixed up, I say, just know that everything that you're reading, every single thing that you're reading happened within the 10 years that we lived at the farm. Right. And then at the other end of it, you see the whole timeline unfold perfectly. It's like it all gels in your brain and it all makes sense. And then when we leave the farm, the whole rest of the story is chronological. Because we thought, and I thought that volume 3 would be the easiest of the 3 books to write. It's a little shorter than the other 2. And I really thought, you know, since I had all of it pretty well down, that it would be, you know, I just kind of buzzed through it. And it turned out to be the most difficult and the most emotional of the 3 books. And the reason was because extricating ourselves from that farm after assimilating in the way that we did with the spirits in that house was very difficult, and it literally fractured our family. We never lived under the same roof together again as a family. I was 21. My sister Nancy was 19. She was so angry at my parents for selling the farm that she went to the new homeowners who were the abutting landowners in Massachusetts that my father had cut a deal with because nobody else had shown any interest on it. It was priced right. But it was like they would let us go. And my mother had to ask them to let us go. And then my father went to Pam and Tom Schwartz and made a deal, a very sweet deal for them on that property. And Nancy was their babysitter. And she was so furious that she went to them and she said, I know you want to work on restoring the house. I'll stay on indefinitely as the caretaker and watch over it for you. I mean, as the crow flies, they only lived about a mile and a half away through the woods, but there was no road. You had to drive 5-6 miles around through the woods to get from Massachusetts back into Rhode Island and back to the farm. So, you know, it would have been vulnerable. So she stayed on for a long time. And by the time she actually moved to Georgia to join us, we had all dispersed around the Atlanta area and we were gone and we were never together as a family again after that. So, you know, for me, that's part of the tragedy of the loss of the farm. But my mother told my father, I won't survive another winter in this house. I won't. We have to sell the farm. And he knew that what that meant. And volume 3 was really hard because not only was it very emotional in terms of leaving it, because half of us never wanted to leave and half of us never wanted to look back. I was in the the half that didn't ever want to leave. I loved the farm. It was a very, very uncomfortable place to live because being such an old house and no insulation, it was brutally cold in the winter and hot as hell in the summer. And you only had a few months out of the year that it was a relatively comfortable place to live. And people ask me all the time, if I would want to live in the house again, and my answer is no. And the reason is not because I'm afraid of anything that happens in the house. I know the spirits well. I still interact with the spirits, but I don't ever want to be that physically uncomfortable again. I live in paradise in Florida now, and I spend, my time in Florida and my time in Georgia with my family here. And, I just don't want to live in New England anymore, but I visit very frequently, and Rhode Island is always going to be my home and heart. And that farmhouse is the only place I've ever lived in my life that felt like home to me. It's the only place on earth that has a sense of permanence for me. And everything else just feels temporary. It's just like, okay, well, here's this pit stop for a few years, and here's that pit stop for a few years. And I've been kind of like a bit of a vagabond in my life. I've traveled a lot, and I've lived in different states. I've lived in Georgia and Florida and Pennsylvania, and I'm out in California a lot for a wide variety of things. I'm just kind of scattered all over the place. My second home is Michigan, and that's because there's a whole bunch of people out there that I'm crazy in love with. Just nuts for it. It's God's country. It really is extraordinarily beautiful. But it's the real story is so much more compelling than the film that I tell people all the time. Don't watch the film first. Read the books first, then watch the film. But then when they do that, they get all verklempt and like, oh my God, it wasn't anything like your story. And my response to them is that's okay, because had it not been for The Conjuring and its enormous success, I wouldn't have a 3-movie deal for my books. So I think that the world is ready for the truth. I really do. I'm not based like a lot of people. I think that they can handle it. And I think that what's phenomenal, truly phenomenal about it is the reality of it. That it doesn't need to be blown up into something that it's not, that it doesn't require hyperbole, that it doesn't require CGI, that it doesn't require, all that is required is telling the truth of the story. That's what's magical about it. It transformed each and every one of us. Each one of us was reacted to that 10 years in profound and significantly different ways. And that's part of the psychological drama of it. I don't, when I answer the question, why did you people stay there for so long? There were a lot of reasons. If you're old enough to remember the early 70s, it was a time of tumultuous upheaval in the country. My parents had just raised the biggest amount of money that they had ever had to raise to buy a 200-acre farm, and the property values were dropping like a rock. I mean, they were losing money and value on the property every month. That was when the oil embargo happened and the forming of the cartel in the Middle East. And if you're old enough, you'll remember that you could only buy gasoline every other day according to the odd or even number at the end of your license plate. It was inflation was running rampant. All hell was breaking loose. The war in Vietnam was raging. It was just a really dark time in our country's history, and my parents felt trapped. My father certainly felt trapped, and was working his heart out to keep that roof over our heads. And meanwhile, he goes off and he had his own business. He sold jewelry. He was not a truck driver. The movie, I don't know why they resorted to truck driver. That's a lot.
It's quite a discrepancy there.
Not that there's anything wrong with being a truck driver, but believe me when I tell you, my father and his perfectly manicured nails would never get them dirty, putting gas in his truck. Oh my God. The garden with me is like full of hen's teeth, honest to God. He does it though. He does it, and he gets his hands dirty, and he scrubs them like, they've got COVID all over them. He's just hysterical. It's dirt now. It's just dirt, okay? It's dirt. Just soak them from under your nails. But yeah, so no, that was huge. He had a very nice car that he filled with very nice jewelry, and he had clients all the way from Quebec to Ohio to Florida. And so when he took off on the road, he was sometimes gone, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, servicing his customers. And when he came home, he was exhausted, and he didn't want to be hit with, stories of this happened while you were gone and that happened while you were gone. And that was really when the breach occurred between my parents, because, my mother doesn't even know how to lie. My mother was not raised that way. And she, when he questioned her veracity about what was happening in the house, it created a chasm between them, and it was a breakdown of trust. And it took him 40 years to admit that the reason why he had to deny what was happening in the house was because he was afraid. And he was really afraid that he had moved his family of 5 little girls and his wife into an environment in which he had absolutely no control at all. And some of the very biggest manifestations that occurred in the house, certainly the most meaningful and the most combustible of the manifestations, occurred in his presence, right with him there. And he felt like he couldn't do anything to stop it. He couldn't do anything to protect us, and it was difficult for him. And he has his regrets, and he's worked hard to make amends with my mom. And interestingly, all April ever wanted in her life was for my mother and father to get along and to make peace, and it took her death to accomplish that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
That's horrible.
You know what? April has visited all of us so many times that she's still like the pest that she always was. She's still like, the last little kid that came along, the fifth wheel, the one that was, can you give me a ride here? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can I go with you? She was just like, oh my God, she was omnipresent. And I was, her big sister. I was the eldest in the family. From the moment I got my driver's license, I became her personal chauffeur. And it was, it was just a thing. And after she passed away suddenly and tragically at the tender age of 51, she was a few weeks away from her 52nd birthday when she died. If we had not grown up in that environment, I'm not sure that I would have recognized when she would come around. I'm not sure that I would be so sensitized that I would know that that was her. So I'm grateful, and I will always be grateful for The Conjuring, because had it not been for that film, nobody would know about my books. They would be languishing in obscurity like a billion other books. Nobody would know that there was a true story behind that film had it not been for the film. And so I'm so grateful that our real true story has been able to touch so many hearts and so many lives, and to enlighten so many souls. It really is an illuminating journey through the netherworld. And it's not It's not necessarily, there's no blood and gore really. I mean, yeah, there was some blood, but not like movie. Um, but it's real. It's real and it's raw. And in the writing of it, you know that it is. In the writing of it, you hear the voices of all of my family. I refer to the trilogy as a collective memoir because even though I wrote it, I brought their input into every single element of the writing of the books. And, it's 1,500 pages. It will take weeks and weeks to read it, but it's worth it. If you're really fascinated, if you're not just looking for a good scare, but you're looking for who, what, when, where, why, and how of the paranormal experience, then that's it, and it's encapsulated in 3 books. However, I will warn people that it does change the way you look at the world. It will, if you're not ready to have your third eye pried wide open, don't even go there.
Yeah.
Because it will change you. It will change you. I've got thousands and thousands of letters from my readers who have told me that they're just not even the same person anymore after reading the books. And I'm glad for that because what's the point of us being on this planet if not to learn and grow and explore and spiritually evolve? What would be the point of being here otherwise? All right, I'm going to take a joint and let you ask me something else because I do have a tendency to go on. I do.
No,
that was fine.
That's perfect. You're our favorite guest.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I'll read the books.
Yeah.
But I'm not watching the movie. I don't care. Like, they might be scary. I don't care. I can put the books in the freezer if they freak me out. I can bury them in the backyard. I don't know. I just can't bury my TV. I love it. But yeah, I'll read the books. I'm gonna look into the books.
Yes, I've actually got one on an order already through Amazon. So I'm gonna get learned.
They sometimes sell the whole trilogy for a special price if you hit it the right way. But I will tell you, Michael, there will be times that you will need to put the books down. There will be times when you've got to put them down and you've got to walk away and you've got to think about what you read and let it absorb and assimilate into your thought processes. It's not an easy read. It is a very emotional journey. You're going to laugh out loud. You're going to cry. You're going to have every human emotion and every reaction to that story. So I just want to warn you in advance. And I also want to warn you in advance, if you put the books in the freezer, it will ruin the bindings. I'm just saying. You can't freeze right afterwards. You can't.
Come on, man. Book maintenance 101.
I'll put them in a cooler with no ice.
Okay, that's all right.
Well, yes, I think I'm gonna order them up and I'm gonna read them, and then I'm not gonna watch the movie though. I can't do it.
Well, once you understand that the movie is fictionalized, it's easier to digest. It really is, because once you realize it's all in the script. And you know what? I will say this, though. The Conjuring did get it right in several ways. Because when people are done watching the film, they leave with distinct impressions. And one of them is that good conquers evil. And that is true. And that love conquers fear. And that is true. And it leaves every viewer with the impression that the Perron family endured an extreme haunting that they all survived. And that is true. One thing that my mother
makes me feel a little bit better
was the way they juxtaposed the devout Roman Catholic Warrens against the godless heathen Perrons. which that couldn't have been further from the truth. We were all born and raised Catholic. We were all baptized. We all made our first communion, and you know, it was our priest, our local parish priest, who was so afraid of having us be part of the parish
Yeah.
that on Easter, the second Easter that we lived at the farm, we all went to church together. And April was, I think, 6 or 7 at the time. And when the Father was up on the altar and he said, "In the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost," she turned and looked at my mother in her big girl voice and said, "See, Mom, God has ghosts just like we do."
No.
That's pretty much it. And the parish priest followed us out of the church that day, and he asked my father to take our family and worship elsewhere. And my father was so devastated because he had been, you know, born and raised in the Roman Catholic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
He attended parochial school. He served the church from when he was a little boy. He was an altar boy for years and years. He joined the service after graduation and went into the Navy. And his intention was to leave the Navy after his service was over and to go directly into the seminary and to become a priest. And so he felt utterly abandoned by the religion that he had devoted his life to. My mother converted from being a Southern Baptist to Catholicism so that she could marry my father. And he met her when he was in the Navy. So that's kind of what ended the whole priest thing. But, you know, my father was the devout, faithful man. And he turned his back on the church after the church turned its back on us. And my mother, who was so hurt on his behalf, said to us, "Girls, if you want to know God, to really know God, go to the woods. Go to the woods."
Yeah.
We did. So if that makes us pagan parents, then damn it, we're pagan parents. It wasn't, you know, we never, other than for a wedding or a funeral, you won't find any one of us in the church ever again after that.
That's
The only other
understandable.
time we go to a church is for somebody else's something.
Right.
Because we are all very deeply spiritual people. All of us are. It doesn't have to do with one religion or another religion. It has to do with connectivity to the universe and to source energy and to know that there is a God, not to assume, not to believe, not to have faith, but to know that there is a God. And the reason that we know there is a God is because when all hell broke loose in that house, which it did from time to time, the only thing that stopped it was asking for God's intervention. And it took 3 words: "God help me," and meaning it, saying it with heart, meaning it. That's what stopped it. It stopped it every single time.
Wow.
Right.
I got a question. Did your friends ever come over to the house and be like, "What's going on here?"
What would make you assume I had friends?
Oh, come on.
It was just a guess, but
You had that friend. You're an amazing person.
We had a lot of friends. And yes, they would come over to the house, and some of them had experiences and they never came back. And some came regularly wanting to have experiences and never did. And some of them, I mean, we had friends that would sleep over, and, you know, it was, oh my God, there are a number of stories, friend stories in the book that will be very illuminating. It was different for everybody. It was. I mean, you know, my Uncle Donald used to come all the time, and he never saw anything strange at the house. And I just, you know, my answer to him when he complained about that, you know, why didn't I see them? And, you know, I just look at him and I'm like, they did not like you. They just did not like you. Themselves to you, and you're just, you know, a tight ass, and just get away from me. And fine. But you know, it was my friends Tim and Ray. They were there all the time. Nancy's friend Katie. Katie lived in a haunted house, and but she, you know, I mean, there were a lot of haunted houses in that area. There were a lot of very old houses in that area, and a lot of strange deaths and odd things that happened. And so she lived on Collins Taft Road, which was not far. And she came over and she was teasing Nancy one morning. She had spent the night and she's like, I knew nothing's going on here. There's nothing happening in this house. And she's in the bathroom and they're, you know, putting on their teenage makeup, you know, all the wrong way. And obviously overdoing it, both of them. And Cindy was sitting at the kitchen table. And it was back in the old days where rotary phones, you know, for those of your listeners that don't know what rotary phones are, rotary phones had a round thing with all the numbers in it all the way around. And we had one round. And all of a sudden, and Cindy could hear Nancy and Katie arguing in the bathroom. And all of a sudden, the receiver on the phone just lifted up off the phone, and it had a long cord because, you know, we were teenagers at that point. And so the cord got stretched out for private conversations. And it starts floating. And Nancy and Katie come out of the bathroom, and Katie's like, and as soon as she saw it, and Cindy just looked at her and she said, told you so. And as soon as Cindy said that, it flew right back over to the wall and hung itself up.
Oh my God.
And Kate stayed away for a while. She did, but eventually she came back. But she actually rented the house after it was vacant, after our family had left, and had an experience there that was so extreme. It's in the 3rd volume. That was so extreme that she called her mother to come get her and the baby, and her boyfriend, her fiance, hadn't come home yet. And when he got home, and she called Nancy, who was living in Chepachet, Rhode Island at that point. She had moved out of the farm. Because of, that's a whole nother story. Believe me when I tell you, volume 3 is like, it will rip your heart out of your body and then hand it back to you healed, and you will not understand how that happened. You won't.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that happened. But, you know, Katie had such an extreme experience in that house that she had to leave. And her mother came, and I mean, they just grabbed her clothes out of the closet. Her mother grabbed the baby, threw them in the car, and got the hell out of there. It was so bad. And Nancy got there, and I mean, there were, they had the same issue with bot flies that we did when we moved in. Bot flies are only found around corpses. They're fat, black, fuzzy flies that exist only around corpses. And my mother used to call them the devil's pets. And they had an infestation of them that was so bad that you literally had to scrape them off the window to let light.
Gosh.
And we dealt with it too when we moved in the middle of January. Nobody has house flies in January. But they weren't house flies. They are paranormal. They are, there's something about them. And, you know, it was interesting too, because that was one of the things when the Warrens did show up.
Yeah.
Excuse me, that my mother told Mrs. Warren about. And Mrs. Warren said to her, Carolyn, bot flies are harbingers of things to come. My mother said, well, I call them the devil's pets because they seemed evil to me. And my husband used to kill them and kill them and kill them. And she just put her hand on my mother's shoulder and she said, Carolyn, you can't really kill what's already dead.
Wow.
Oh, that's intense.
All right, I'm out.
Right.
I just spared my co-host out. Wow, that is all I could say is that's intense.
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I was thinking about getting a book, but I don't know if I can handle it now.
Yeah. And we're just getting it's like tip of the iceberg
Right,
stuff. We're just
Right?
getting kind of like taste.
I would. All flies were the devil's best. So
The what?
The flies suck.
Can I ask the question? How did the whole experience? How was the experience with the Warrens? I mean, were they helpful, or did they make things worse, or they intensify things?
It was everything. I mean, Mrs. Warren told me 40 years after the last time that I saw her at the farm. She said that she and Ed had no idea that the reason why she wanted our story told and why Ed asked on his deathbed that while she was alive to make sure that the family story got told, because he had all said that it was the most, and these are his own words, the most intense, most compelling, most disturbing, and most significant of all of the investigations that they conducted over a 40-year career as paranormal investigators. They felt that it was so significant that it was truly important that the world see it, that the world understand that this is real and that this can happen. I truly believe that my family was supposed to live in that farmhouse for 10 years.
Yeah.
We're supposed to experience what we did. And then 30 years after we left, I was supposed to tell the story. I had a very strong sense of belonging there. I had a sense of, and I don't mean to intimate that there was never a time that I was frightened. Yes, there was, but it wasn't because of what was being done to me. Even though my sister Cindy saw a couple of times terrible things being done to me, but I was not conscious when it was happening. And so I was not aware. And Cindy, probably of the five of us, not probably, definitely, Cindy was the one that suffered the most. And yet it's interesting, in terms of perspective, the Warrens only came to the house 5 or 6 times. I think the 6th time that they came was to check and see if my mother was still alive, because the night of the seance, they didn't know if she was unconscious in the middle of the parlor floor, and my father threw them out, and it was very ugly, and he behaved very badly, but he was absolutely frantic, and he had just seen something that no mere mortal should ever see. It was, I think the Warrens tried to help us, and I think that they absolutely had the right intentions. Not everybody in my family agrees with that, but that was my sense of things with them. And I know that when I saw Lorraine just before the film opened, a few months before the film opened, Warner Brothers invited us out for a private screening. Myself, and I brought my sister Cindy, and she brought her son-in-law. And the 4 of us sat in this huge vacuous theater and watched The Conjuring together. And afterwards, I said something about wanting to go back to the house, and that woman burst into tears and threw herself around me and said, "Andrea, don't go back, don't go back. You don't understand. That house is calling you back. You won't survive it. You'll never get out of there alive, and you'll be trapped there for eternity. Promise me you won't go back." And, and I had to literally promise her that I would not go in that house again, because that's how, all those years later, she was adamant that, our family was chosen for that, and that this is not a cycle that should be repeated. And they had their own opinions, and they came at the haunting from a very specific perspective. And we did too. But like I said, really in the grand scheme of things, they only spent a few hours there. But we
Right.
Right.
lived it for 10 years. So there were many, many things that happened in that house that, there were 7 years more that we lived there after the night of the seance
Wow.
that my father did not want to happen, that almost killed my mom, but that 4 of the 5 of us children were in the house when it happened was really bad news. That was an extremely
Yeah.
poor judgment call. My father lost his temper and punched Ed right in the face.
Wow.
Bloody nose. Ed tried to stop him from going to my mother when she was
Yeah.
tossed through the air and she was knocked unconscious. And that was a mistake. He made a
Wow.
mistake. He wanted Lorraine to be able to get to her. The medium that they had brought with them to conduct the seance was unconscious on the table, and the priest that they had brought with them was literally quaking in the corner of the dining room and could not move,
Oh my
other than
God.
his body shaking mortal fear.
Wow.
What we saw that night was not of this world.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that, a lot of people ask me, how can you be so cheerful and optimistic and so full of
Yeah.
love and happiness and light? And my response is always identical. I have seen the dark side of existence, and I choose to live in the light. It is a choice that every one of us makes, whether consciously or subconsciously, every day of our lives. I make sure that I shine so bright that nothing dark will come near me. It doesn't
Yeah.
dare. It doesn't dare.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good lesson for everybody.
Yeah.
And especially right now. With everything going on
Well,
in
it
the world right
requires practicing the presence. It does.
Mhm.
It requires practicing the presence of the light in the universe, of source energy, of God
Yeah.
consciousness, and everybody has a different idea of what God is, and it's not a belief system for me. If you really want to extrapolate it out to its
Yeah.
most logical conclusion, even atheism is a belief system. It's a
Yeah.
belief that there is no God.
Right.
Right.
Well, I know that there is a higher energy. I know that there is light in the universe, and I know that this duality that we live in our 3D our realm that we live in by choice is just a fraction of the truth of our existence, that we actually live in a multidimensional universe. And
Yeah.
I've seen that. But what I want to tell you is what I consider to be the most uplifting story from the
Yeah.
farm. And that was when my mother really suffered there. And after the night of the seance, it took my father about 45 minutes. She obviously had a concussion. He was trained in the Navy, and he knew what to do to take care of her. And when she came back, he just cared for her. There was
Mhm.
nothing that they could have done for her at a hospital, and how the hell was he going to explain how she got in the condition that she did
Right.
if she went to the hospital?
Yeah.
So he took care of her, and we all gathered around her and cried and asked her to come back to us. And
Mhm.
for a couple of months afterwards, she was just not herself. And
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
kind of wasting away, and she was thin and living on coffee and cigarettes and very thin. And one night, I kind of took over being the mommy. And I had turned 16, had just turned 16 years old.
Oh
And
wow.
Dad was away on a business trip, and I had made beef stew for the girls for dinner. And Mom got up, and it was late. It was like 10:30, quarter of 11. It was just before the news came on, and I was doing my homework on the sofa, and it was cold in the house that night. It was October. And
Yeah.
she came out of her bedroom and she said, "I'm hungry." And oh, those are words I needed to hear. And she asked what I made for dinner. And I
Yeah.
told her I made beef stew. And she's like, "Oh, that would be so good. Would you warm me up a bowl of beef stew and make a short pot of coffee?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's almost 11 o'clock at night." She's like, "Oh, okay." And I had already closed the house down for the night. We were in the parlor. She was standing on the hearthstone. I had built a fire, so it was nice and warm in there. And I went through the darkened dining room, through the front foyer, into the kitchen, into the pantry, got out. Microwaves had not even been invented yet. So I had to warm the stew up right out of the pressure cooker pot that I had cooked it in, and make a pot of coffee in a percolator because Mr. Coffee hadn't been invented yet either. And so I was gone for a good 15 or 20 minutes. And in the interim, my mother leaned over, moved the screen from in front of the fireplace, reached into the wood box, picked up a large piece of wood, and threw it on the fire. And then as she was replacing the screen, she heard laughter behind her. And she turned around and she looked into the dining room, and there's a big, huge opening between the dining room and the parlor. And she could see the whole room. And what she saw was a family having dinner from the 1700s, because the two men had Peter Steins in front of them. And those were outlawed by the 1800s because of the lead content for food, for eating, food or drink. And the fireplace that had been sealed shut more than 100 years when we bought the house was wide open. There was a raging fire going in it, and there was a woman cooking stew standing in front of the fireplace. And she told her children, who were running around the room, to take their places on the bench at the table that was not our own. The furniture was not our own. There was a hand-hewn oak table that had two benches, and on one side the kids sat down to eat as she carried the stew over to the table and put it in. It had oil lamps and candles burning, and the two men were sitting there, and one of them looked into the parlor and saw her standing on the hearthstone, and nudged the man beside him and pointed her out to him. And they were looking into they were seeing a ghost in the future, and she was seeing a ghost in the past.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Suddenly it was like, boom! Suddenly got it. She suddenly understood that we were living in a portal that was only cleverly disguised as a farmhouse. And, her pragmatic Virgo mind finally latched on to the truth of our existence. And they smiled at her, and she smiled back.
Oh,
geez,
there was communication for just a few seconds. And then they were gone because I opened the door with a tray of food. And there's my mother standing 2 rooms away, grinning from ear to ear. And I hadn't seen her smile, and I couldn't remember how long. And I said, "Mom, what happened?" And she just looked at me and she said, "I get it. I get it." Wow. And I brought the food in and put it on the coffee table and served her her dinner. And she told me what she saw. It was amazing.
That is amazing.
It's just I love hearing stories like that. It makes me feel like what we do has a little bit more meaning than just going and trying to find ghosts.
Yeah.
It's trying to find out the whole, like, we're trying to have that moment that your mom had.
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to figure out the spirituality part of it.
Yeah.
That'd be some amazing stew.
Of Andrea Perron made the stew. I'm sure it was.
Yep.
It was a kick-ass stew. It was.
I figured.
No kidding. I can cook.
We'll have to come down and check it out sometime. We'll take the show on the road and hit Andrea.
get some stew.
Yeah.
Stew potatoes.
And potato salad, yeah.
Riff-raff in. I don't know. We'll see.
She must have heard about
I
us.
would be happy to cook for you. Happy to cook for you. But it's going to have to be post-COVID-19.
Yes,
Post-COVID-19.
yeah.
Everybody's had a vaccine plunged into them, and then we can talk about it. Okay?
That's
Yeah, there you go. I hear
a
you.
deal. We'll be there.
That's a good story.
Virtually all my events for the year are canceled.
Yeah.
I there's still probably a couple of things left on the docket that I don't think are going to make it. And it's not wise for us to, I know there are some lunatics and imbeciles out there that say it's all a hoax, it's not real. Well, yes, it is, and it's invisible, just like the ghosts are most of the time. That doesn't mean they're not real either. It's a real thing, and millions of people will die from this by the time it's done running its course all over the globe. It is the first true global pandemic, but more importantly, it is the paradigm shift. And that's what I have been talking about for a decade. That's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it's here. And nothing will ever be the same on the other side of it. We will have to, as humans do, adapt and adjust and learn our way through this. Find new ways to communicate, like, for instance, StreamYard, which is a wonderful service. I love it.
So do we.
Everybody's Zooming and everybody's Skyping and everybody's, we're responsibly physically separate, but we're not socially distant. We're just finding new ways to be social.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I can't wrap my arms around any of you right now. That doesn't mean that we never will.
Right.
It just means that right now we have to gather like birds of a feather in this venue. That works. We're able to communicate and care about each other and love each other and share stories and be with one another in a different way. But this will change. There's nobody on this planet that will go untouched by this.
Right.
Before it's over, everyone's going to either lose someone that they've loved or know someone who has lost someone they've loved to this pandemic. And it is truly the first global pandemic in that we live in a day and an age where you can get on a plane and you can take a deadly virus from Wuhan province, China to New York City in, a few hours.
Right.
And it's, there's not a place on earth that will be untouched. Every continent will have their bout with this. And so we need to be about extraterrestrials. Last year I published it, and I'm republishing it with the addendum now, because the whole book is about the pending paradigm shift, and here it comes. Well, here it is.
Yeah.
And so I had to put in one more chapter to deal with the here and now of this.
Yeah.
And it will significantly change life as we know it. It will open us up by breaking our hearts wide open. That's what it is. That's how the light gets in. The darkness and the fracturing from the darkness is how the light gets in. And so we will be a different species on the other side of this. The human race will understand that it is all one race.
Right.
And it is that realization of oneness that this is bringing forth now.
Right.
And so I marvel at it as I put my mask on to go out shopping at Publix. As I'm quite certain I've already had this. I was so sick last fall that I just figured I was just going to die. I mean, I really did. I thought I was going to die. And I have a holistic doctor who did some really weird stuff to me to cleanse my blood.
Well,
You know, I mean, they sucked my blood out of my body and mixed it with liquid oxygen and mixed it with liquid antibiotics and
Ah,
composine and all kinds of saline solution and put my blood
yeah,
back into me
oh my
because
God.
my blood, it had gone systemic with
yeah,
me. I was sick for about 5 weeks and I picked it up in Michigan in September. So now they're
Wow.
just now finding out COVID has been around a hell of a lot longer than before it had a name.
Right.
oh yeah,
And so I'm pretty sure I already had it, but until there is an accurate antibodies test, I'm just
yeah,
going to assume that I haven't and protect myself and my family and others
yeah,
around me from it.
Right.
And
sure,
we just have to figure out a way. We're smart. We can figure out a way to get through this,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
not even about the physical vessel. It's about how it's changing us spiritually, how
Yeah.
it's a part of our spiritual ascension, and the understanding that the line between life and death is so paper thin. It
yeah,
will teach all of us in the grand scheme, will teach all of us in the big picture that we are all one family and we are um, fighting this together. We are
yeah,
literally all in this together. It's not just a bumper sticker, it's the truth of our
Right.
right,
existence.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's something like to prove that to
mhm,
most people are being
yeah,
very responsible about this, are being very conscientious about this, understand the significance of this, understand that we have no immunity to this. But here's what I
mhm,
find most fascinating about it, really, is that we're all dealing, we're all in the paranormal for, better or for worse, whatever that field is, it's a big umbrella.
mhm,
Hmm.
But what we are dealing with right now is life and death. What we are dealing with right now is all of us in unison confronting our own mortality, knowing that
right,
this could take us, not
Yeah.
yeah,
knowing if having it once even builds permanent immunity, not knowing enough
right,
about this rogue virus, this novel virus, this unique
uh,
thing that is ravaging the planet.
yeah,
It is, we're all confronting this. And so I think that this is the perfect time for us to focus on what is supernatural, what is
yeah,
paranormal, to be in touch with spirit, to be in touch with our loved ones, to ask
yeah,
for their protection, to
mhm,
communicate with them, to be open with them, to ask our galactic family to intercede on our behalf if you so choose. They are there. They are helping. They
yeah,
are. It's probably the question that I get asked the most. If you're so close with your little friends, why don't you get them down here to help us? And I'm like, they are. They're making their
yeah,
presence known over the
yeah,
world. They are enlightening the world to their presence so that we
yeah,
understand that we are not alone. They can't come down here and solve our problems for us.
Right.
That's
right,
what we have to do. We have to peck our way like little baby chicks out of our own shell, our own three-dimensional, five-sensory,
right,
minuscule realm of being so that we can
yeah,
see the universe on the other side of it. And the only way
mhm,
that we can do that is to use our own energy, our own
mhm,
ingenuity, our own wherewithal, and build our strength to peck our way out because it's equivalent to the amount of energy and strength that it will require to live outside the egg.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That
So
makes
just
complete
like
sense.
we're just like baby chicks, we have to peck our own way out. We have to solve our own problem so
Yeah,
that we've earned the right to live cosmically.
yeah,
That's the truth of us.
yeah,
And I don't care who thinks I'm nuts. I really don't. I don't care. I really don't. I
Right.
am not here to convince anybody of anything. I am not here to persuade anybody of anything. Believe what you want. I can't say, had I not grown up in the environment that I did, if I would even believe our own story. I can't say that.
Yeah.
I believe it because I lived it. I know it. But, had I not experienced it, I can't say that I would. Had my life experience, excluded anything paranormal in nature, I would be, I think, very skeptical about it. Of course I would be. Any rational thinking person would go, oh, well, I'm here to tell you, yes it can, yes it did. And I spent 7 years of my life tethered to a keyboard to tell the story as authentically and as richly and as pure of heart as I possibly could. And it was very cathartic. It was very healing. It was very disturbing. Reliving, my mother once said to me, I was writing notes furiously, sitting right here at the table that I'm talking to you from, and just writing until my wrist would snap, and my mother reached over, this was about 10 years ago, and she said, stop. And I looked at her like, why? I was like mid-sentence, and she had just said something brilliant. I needed to write it down. And Buttercup, are you behaving? Are you being the good girl? Let's be being the good girl right now. And she said, we spent decades trying to bury our dead from the farm. And yet, when it came time to exhume them, it's amazing how close to the surface they were buried.
Wow.
I mean, the memory just flooded back. And it's because when you see something or experience something, leave that kitty alone. Leave the kitty alone. Come here. Come here. When you experience something into your brain, it's seared into like branded into your brain, like you can remember the temperature in the room. Hold on a second. Okay. Come say hi to everybody.
There she is.
God. Everyone's beautiful.
Everybody needs a puppy break.
Yep.
I wish I had my puppy now.
He's my baby. My baby. She just wants to be kitty's life. She just does. Hide my double chin. I don't remember you see how that works. It's just like, it's like if we were to look back on it now. I thought as I was writing the books, I'm like, Nancy's not going to remember it the same way that Chris did. Chris isn't going to remember it the same way that Cindy did. They're not going to remember it the same way that I did. Dad doesn't even want to talk about it. What am I doing? What am I even trying to do this for? And we would, when I got together with everybody and we compared and contrasted every story, they were all exactly the same. Chris remembered it exactly the way Cindy remembered it. That dog hair remember. Hold up.
Isn't that the best?
A cat that mysteriously got eaten. Okay, all right, good. That's one. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Now my makeup's all a mess. So I really think that it would be like just like a cluster, ideas and revisiting things. And yet, when I went through the whole trilogy with every single member of the family, literally story by story by story, there was only one thing that had to change. And I had gotten the season wrong in one of the stories about the bloody orange. Michael, I don't mean to scare you, Michael, but there's something just I'm not even kidding, Michael. Something just moved. The shadow figure moved right behind you. I'm telling you, go back and look right here. Mark the time where you are. Because it just went right through the room. It moved from Goose right behind you, Michael. So, just chill, baby. Chill. That's all right. That's okay. Just friends.
Usually does it. No.
Friends visiting.
Something I saw.
It was a remarkable journey. And, I know there are people I know there are people in this field that wish that I would, maybe hype the fear factor more, and I won't do it. And I understand that there are people that work in this field that the fear factor is a commodity to them.
Yeah.
It's how they sell their books, it's how they sell their films. It's, and so I'm out there preaching peace and love and hope and unity with the spirit realm, and they're like, couldn't you just scare the pants off us? I'm like, you want to be scared? Go to a movie. Really, you've come to the wrong place. I think that the only way to overcome fear is to embrace it, to thank it as the tool that it's supposed to be, to tap us on the shoulder and say, don't go there with him. Don't get in that car. Don't do that. That instinct, that intuition that we have that's inborn and inbred to warn us away from danger.
Right.
But we're not supposed to sacrifice our lives to it, like, a sacrificial lamb. We're not supposed to turn over our intellect to it and let it dictate as an emotion how we should live our lives. And most fear-based carbon units do that, exactly that. And then they get to the end of their lives and say, oh, I wish I had taken some risks. I wish that I had, maybe gone there and done that, but I was afraid. I was afraid to do it on my own. I was afraid to spend the money. I was afraid. And at the end of their lives, they look back and they lived a half life because of fear. And I refuse to be one of those people. I refuse. I just embrace it and thank it for every time it saved me, every time it warned me away from doing something stupid, every time it saved me from my own poor judgment. And I embrace it and I thank it and wish it well on its journey. I don't need you anymore. I have no fear. I have no fear.
Yeah.
I don't. And my mother said that to a friend of mine just this morning. She was talking about that, and I was telling him he's going to investigate the farmhouse this weekend. And so he wanted to talk to me about it. And my mom happened to be up having coffee with me when we talked. And I said, I think it's very interesting that my sister Cindy wishes that she had never lived there and never had that experience at all, and wishes that she could have that decade of her life back someplace else and have a normal life. And that's how it left her. And my mother thinks it's the most illuminating decade of her life. And ever since then has lived without any fear of death, because she knows that there is something beyond our mortal existence. And she believes that if you live your life pure of heart and with kindness and good intentions, and you don't leave any unfinished business behind, that you're traveling through the cosmos can be absolutely phenomenal, and you won't be earthbound and you won't be stuck here. And so it gives her great hope to know. To know. I'm sorry, my throat is so dry.
Oh, it's okay.
Penny Royal is blooming here in Georgia. It smells like old perfume, and it makes my sinuses drip down my throat into my chest.
I've had some pretty horrible allergies this
Oh,
week.
everything's high. Tree pollen.
Yeah.
Well, I've been reading a lot of old spores and stuff, although I've been choking to death in Florida too, and it's a totally different environment, so I don't know what. Probably COVID. So I'll stay away from everybody until it passes. It really is a remarkable journey that we're on, and my mother has, from that point in her life, lived her whole life free of the fear of death. And what do human beings fear? We fear the unknown.
Right.
We fear being harmed. We sometimes hear each other
Sure.
with good reason. Not everybody on the planet is all lovey, kissy, feely, yucky,
Unfortunately.
and so there are reasons,
Right.
to, unfortunately. But she doesn't have any fear of death because she really does believe that she's lived, not a perfect life, but
Right.
essentially she's always lived in good faith. She's always been a loving mother. She's always been an honest soul. She's always
Hmm.
done everything that she can for anybody else that was in need. She's lived a
Right.
good life. She's going to be 81 in August, God willing, and Dad's going to be 85.
Wow.
And I feel very grateful to still have both of my parents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially after losing my baby sister. I
Right.
don't know how one of them survived that loss. I don't know how I survived that loss. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, it absolutely leveled me. Um,
Yeah.
and yet she's around me all the time, all the time. I had one of my
Yeah.
readers call me this morning. She's one of
Uh
my
huh.
readers who's reading the new book and she's reading the trilogy simultaneously. I'm like, really? Do you want to take on all of that at once?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. And she's like, I read the trilogy during the day. She's a librarian, so she gets to
Oh,
read a
okay.
lot.
Oh.
And she's like, I read during the day in my empty library because nobody's coming in. And then at night, I read A Wonder to Behold. And
Yeah.
so, which is not even out worldwide yet. I'm only selling it privately right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
It'll be available. It will be available in the next month or so,
Okay.
worldwide on Amazon. But right now, you can't even get it on Amazon. You can only get it through me.
Gotcha.
But she said, April keeps visiting me. I know it's her. I keep, every time I'm reading about April in the trilogy or reading about April in the new book, she says, I get this sensation of being surrounded by
Yeah.
white light, just white light. And she said, it's not something that I see, it's something that I feel. And I said, and that's how strong her presence is. It is.
That's
She
beautiful.
knows who you are. She
Yeah.
knows you're reading her story. And
Right.
she's so happy about that. And she'll just glow up your life. She will. She will. And one time she showed up like 3 days in a row. She showed up in
Oh,
my
wow.
office in what I call
Yeah.
the man cave. And I just looked up and there was this beautiful light right in the doorway between the hallway and the door. And I said,
Yeah.
honey, you're not even giving me a chance to miss you. But
Mhm.
please don't leave. And don't leave. And I
Yeah.
know she's there waiting and I know she's watching over us. And like I said before, had I not grown up in the environment that I did, I might not have recognized that
Right.
when
Yeah.
I presence. She didn't even realize she was dead. She had to go to my sister Cindy the next morning, and Cindy had to tell her that she had indeed died because she died in her sleep from a
Wow.
drug overdose because she was
Oh,
given the
no.
wrong prescription strength of a fentanyl patch and it stopped her heart. She was
Oh
supposed to
my
go to
gosh.
surgery on her neck
Yeah.
the next morning. When her daughter went to pick her up, she found her body.
Oh
It was
no.
Oh, my God.
traumatizing to our whole family. Absolutely
Yeah.
horrible. And
Right.
but she knows how we suffered. She knows
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
how we suffered and how much we miss her.
Right.
Yeah.
She's a bright light in the firmament. She is. She is.
That's
Oh.
beautiful that you
And
mentioned so
so,
fond of that.
well, I just want people to know that if you've lost someone that you adore, you haven't really lost them. They're right there. They're right there. And all you have to do is talk to them. Just talk
Hmm.
to them. And they will give you a form of communication that is absolutely unmistakable that it is them.
Hmm.
And so have faith. that we never really lose. Love is permanent. Love is forever. And even though they're physically not with us anymore, they're with us in spirit and they're with us in heart. And it was so, I got here and Christine said to me, she's like, it was April's birthday, actually. And she told me what happened to her on April's birthday. And April and I kind of favored each other in life, even though I had gray hair and she had blonde hair. And Christine got up on the morning of April's birthday and walked into the kitchen, and she looked up and she thought she saw me, and she thought that I had driven up from Florida to surprise her and Mom. And she looked up and she's like, Ann, what are you doing here? And then the head that was looking out the back window at the big tree turned, and it was April.
Oh, jeez, that's beautiful.
On her birthday, because April would not want anybody to forget her birthday.
Smart.
That's her. Such an Aries, like celebrate me if I'm here, celebrate me if I'm gone, celebrate me.
Right.
You know, such a good girl. Oh my God, she was a pill in life, and you know, I mean, we fought as much as we loved each other, but I adored her. I adore her. Present tense. So, you know, anybody that, especially now, with so many souls leaving this earth at one time, you know, just know that they're not really gone, that this is the transition, that this is the paradigm shift, that we will all learn the true meaning of love on the other side of this. We will understand so much more about the way that we interact and the meaning of having each other in our lives in this way is so powerful and so profound and so healing. So that's the message that I put out in the world, and some people are like, well, you know, can't you like really just scare the daylights out of us? And I just tell them, go read a book. Go read a book or go see a movie. You're not going to get that from me because I'm not afraid. I have nothing to be afraid of. I've lived stuff that most people can't even fathom, and came up on the other side whole and happy and full of light because I've seen things. I've seen some things. Oh my God, you know, that tell me that most of us are walking around living half lives. And if that's my message to the world, it's wake up to the true nature of reality. Wake up. And once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. Everything will be different on the other side. Everything is beautiful. Peace is an inside job. Happiness is an inside job. Just be still. Be still and be quiet and go inside and sense your own extraordinary power. Our superpower is love. If we focus on that, everything else will be fine. Everything. Everything. It's the most healing, most redemptive quality that we have as spiritual light beings. And when we come to understand that, when we come to understand that, you know, there were spirits in the house that were absolutely benevolent, that really adored us, that, you know, we had one that she would make the rounds through the house at night and tuck us in. And we knew it wasn't our mother because my mother always smelled like a bar of freshly opened ivory soap. That was my mother. Ivory soap. You know, and the spirit would come and she'd lean over us in bed and almost touch us on the forehead, almost. And when she got that close, all we could smell was flowers and fruit. A very strange
Oh.
combination of flowers
Yeah.
and fruit. Flowers that were fully open and
Yeah.
fragrant and blossoming, and fruit that was just ready to go over. Like
Yeah.
just so ripe that
Yeah.
it made you, like your mouth would water. You know? And
Yeah.
that was her scent, and she wasn't cold. She, some of them that got around us were very cold. I mean, supernatural cold, bizarre coldness.
Yeah.
But she wasn't one of them. She was a light being, and I don't know why she was still there. I don't know why she stayed. I don't understand. And anybody that tells you that they know everything about the paranormal, run away from them.
We say that all the
Away
time. There's no such thing as a professional in this business.
We don't know. We don't know what we experienced there. We know that there is something beyond our mortal existence. None of us can still tell you exactly what the true nature of it is. And I think that's so important to be that honest with people. It's really important to let them know that we don't know, because that's what keeps us curious and fascinated and searching and examining our own existence. That's what brings us into a higher level of understanding. That is the point of illumination, having these experiences that literally are life altering is part of that growing process. There is no one that has all the answers, and they tell you that they do. They're lying to themselves and they're lying to you, and it would be best to get away from them as fast as possible.
Right.
Yep, I agree, and that's
Well,
pretty
we
much
got like 10 minutes. Anybody got any questions?
What?
What was that?
Oh my gosh. There's only 10 minutes left.
Holy crap.
I know.
I'm like, oh, actually.
Oh, you look amazing.
Because we got another show that breaks in on right at 10. So, all right. Anybody who has any questions for Andrea, please ask. Wow. Time slipped.
Yep.
I just have to say that I really thought that this was going to be very different. I knew that it was going to be amazing, but I never thought that it would make me like I'm going to buy the book within 10 minutes of us ending this conversation. I just have to say that I love your attitude about everything. And I can't imagine going through what you went through and having such a positivity. And I think that it's fantastic. And honestly, I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you don't do the scare thing. And I'm definitely going to buy the books and probably read them before the next one comes out. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. Have Goose give you my personal cell phone.
Okay.
And contact me, Denise. Okay, just text me and let me know it's you, so I don't think you're like a spam thing or anything. And I will. I'll give you the little primer on how to hop in and answer any questions that you have as you're going through. I'll be there with you to go through it, because it really and it'll give us more time. And then, after, I'll come back on the show whenever you want me to. And
how's next week? And the week after that. And then the week after that.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm a slow reader, so I gotta have at least
I don't know how often I'll put them in the book. So.
I have two little kids. It's so hard for me to read and have quiet time.
It's so hard for me to read anyways, but
hey.
I had to get one.
Actually, I'll just call Andrea and she could read them to me.
Oh
my God, that'd be great.
No, that doesn't happen. You have to read. And there's lots of big words in the book, because I don't dumb down anybody. And so every now and then I'll get a letter from somebody like, geez, I needed a dictionary to read your books. And, and my attitude about that is, I hope the worst thing that ever happens to you is that you had to learn a new word today.
Right.
No, really, I really do. You know, because once you look up the word in the dictionary and you see
Right.
that word in context with that sentence, you will
Yeah.
understand that was precisely, exactly the
Yeah.
right word
Yeah.
to do, you know, and
You
I'm
made them
sorry if
smarter.
that's hard for
Right.
you. You know, no, this isn't grade school stuff. It's not. I mean, you know, I've got a degree in this language, and I mastered this language as a child because my mother is a genius, and she never
Yeah.
spoke to us as though we were little kids. She always spoke to us as though we were
Yes.
full grown, totally cognizant, erudite
Yes.
adults. Always.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we all have command of the language, and I'm not afraid to use it.
Good.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
So keep a dictionary handy, or you'll have hands.
I'll help you understand.
I was just gonna have Denise read it to me.
And that's
I hope
an
that she,
idea too.
you know, explains what the words mean.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have to use a dictionary to look at some of them.
Well, you guys are absolutely delightful. Delightful. And Denise, I mean it. Get in touch with me. You know,
I
let
will.
them talk among themselves.
Okay.
I'll talk to
Yeah,
you.
I'll give them.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'm
It
so
really,
excited.
it really will. It really will enlighten you to the possibilities that exist out
Yeah.
there in the universe. And just
Yeah.
remember, we don't live in a three-dimensional, five-sensory realm. We live in a multi-dimensional universe. Experience the universe. You
Yeah.
can. You can.
Yeah.
It's yours to be asking.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Sing it, sister.
Wow. I don't think I've ever been so close
I'm
to
going to, I know you have to close out. What is it? 9:58, and there's another show coming on shortly. I mean, I'm flying. So, oh no, we have a few more minutes. But anybody that wants to be in touch with me, you can find me. I'm everywhere, omnipresent. All you have to do is Google my name. Literally, I'm sorry, my nose is running. And can I find a tissue in this house? Can I find a tissue? Tissues in this house, and I can't. And I'm having to wipe my nose on my jammy bottoms. I'm 2 years old.
Oh, that's what you got before.
Anyway, I just hi, Buttercup, my baby, my
Oh,
baby.
good. Can we say bye to Buttercup too?
Princess Buttercup, I guess. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. She did a white
Mom's
on.
and the dog.
There you go. There you go.
Yay.
Oh, there it is.
Bye, Buttercup.
And she's our mascot for the Buttercup Brigade, which is my fan page on Facebook. It really is the page I kind of founded because I'm a big fan of my fans. You know, I mean, I would be nowhere in life without them. You know, so it's a wonderful place in cyberspace. It's called Buttercup Brigade, and you can just ask to come on, and it's a relatively small group. Mom, Sammy has to pee. Oh God! All right, hold on. I gotta take dogs out. So anyway, they're there, and and on my Facebook page, and just Google my name. I'm everywhere. I'm just everywhere.
Okay.
It's really I'm like the easiest person to be in touch with. So you know, feel free. And please give Denise my phone number, okay, babe?
Yep, you better.
Okay. All right.
I will.
Okay.
Well, I love you guys. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
It's been amazing. Great show. Great show.
Amazing.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. All right, crypto heads, that's going to be it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. That was an amazing show.
Oh my gosh, I
can't
love
believe
her.
it's already over. I know, wasn't she awesome?
She's amazing.
I mean, I didn't know what. I mean, I knew I've seen her speak before.
Right.
Totally amazing. she gets into a whole other realm of stuff too. Just I mean, beyond the Conjuring house, she was speaking on UFOs and alien encounters and stuff. I mean, she's got just a wealth of experience and knowledge in just a full realm of paranormal. She's an amazing person.
She is so cool.
So,
you better give me her cell phone number. She told me to.
What's that?
But you better give me her cell phone number. She told me. She told me to text her.
We're up here and on the way home, I will definitely shoot you that number. She's definitely an interesting person to know and talk to.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I think she said give me the cell phone number too.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
There's no jealousy on this show.
Don't try to steal my new best friend.
All right. The dynamic is starting right now.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
2 against 1, but I finally have a backup. I'm sure she'll switch sides when it's needed. You got to put goose in this place. I'm sure it'll happen. But
be at my place.
So really quick, before this happened Tuesday to me, or not to me, but big news in the Goose family world. My brother and his wife had their child on Tuesday. I'm officially an uncle. We kind of kept it. We kind of kept it on the down low because there were some complications with her pregnancy, but she technically wasn't due to the first week of August and had to have an emergency C-section on Tuesday. So it was a little scary, a little stressful, but baby is doing well. He's on a ventilator. Just till his lungs completely form. But he's holding strong, eating and pooping like a champ already.
Good.
Mom's doing well, and my brother Johnny, dude, so happy for you, and it kills me not to be able to be there with you right now.
Yeah.
Kind of give bro support, but congratulations to you both. Not that either of you watch the show, but it just happened to when I was sharing the show out, I saw Angie finally did the official Facebook announcement. So I'm like, I can finally talk about it. So I'm super excited about that, and I'm really, they still need some prayers. So think about them, send some prayers out and some love.
She's probably talking about something else, and all of a sudden you're like, put this out there. She's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, right. But little Bennett Shoneman has made his presence known, and he's officially with us, and I'm officially an uncle, and my brother's officially a father. I guess that's more important than being an uncle, but whatever. Oh, all right. I just had to get that out there. Sorry, guys.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks. But yeah, awesome show. Next week.
Yeah.
Next week. I did have. What's that?
I wanted to ask her if they really do call everything Coke in Georgia. Damn it!
She said she was drinking Coke.
I know. That's what made me. I had it in the back of my mind. I was going to ask that.
I'll ask her when I call her later.
Yeah, there you go. But amazing show. And next week we actually have Steve and Pam Barry and Eric Julian. They are the coordinators for the Gettysburg Bash, which is still going on, and I will still be attending, and Mike will be attending in July. So super excited to have them on. We'll get to learn about the Gettysburg Ghost Exchange, which is in a historic building in Gettysburg, but it's a paranormal store.
I'm sure Kate's going to know if that Friendly's is really around there.
We'll have to ask that question. That is the burning question of the evening that night.
Yep.
And also, they own the Lookout Hotel in Gettysburg, which is another historical property that they do public ghost hunts and events at. So it should be very interesting. I've known Eric for a long time. I haven't personally spoken to Pam or Steve yet, but looking forward to hearing that. And yeah. That's going to probably wrap it up for the show tonight.
Yep.
All right, Crypto Heads. We thank you for joining us. What is one of the favorite shows I've had so far.
Yes, that was amazing.
Great. So, wow, a lot. I'm like in this deep thought period now.
Yeah.
There's no show, but I don't see it now.
Good. All right.
Mr. Wolver said y'all kick ass. It was an excellent show. Thank you, buddy. When you get that backup from the big boss,
right.
Feels good.
You like how
All
it was
right, I'm
my
done.
voice,
Yeah.
though, 'cause
You got
none of
anything
us
to
were
say before I wrap it?
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Okay. Well, we'll gotta get off here before Heisenberg pisses his pants.
Yes. I didn't want to get up there. Usually I get up.
Yeah.
And I don't care, but I wanted to listen to all her stuff.
Right.
So I was here going, like, I don't know, you see me fidgeting a little bit more.
All right, we will spook you later, Crypto Heads.
All
Again,
right.
next week on the Paranormal Show, we got Steve, Pam Berry, and Eric Julian from the Gettysburg Ghost Exchange. So, cool deal.
Cool.
Everybody have a good night and a good weekend. Denise, we love you. Thank you for being on.
Love you.
We'll see you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And that'll be it. We love you guys, and we will spook you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No. I lost you. Love you.